Hey, Pedram, so good to have you on the show. We met at a AI roundtable event in Chicago last year.
Jeff, good to see you again. Thank you for having me.
Yes, let me give the audience a quick introduction of you. Currently, you are the chief scientist at OpsWatt, dedicating your expertise to advancing machine learning, threat intelligence, and spearheading R&D innovation across diverse security solutions. You also hold advisory roles at Mozilla for their Gen AI bug bounty program, Odin.ai, Exodus Intelligence, and Attack IQ. Beyond your professional achievements, you are an angel investor, Austin business owner, and a jiu-jitsu aficionado. So you are just very busy.
Yes, that's true. I do sleep little. But thank you for the warm introduction.
Okay, so we'll dive in, to I think you call it a labor of love, right? Maestro. So what frustration or pain points that led you to decide to build that?
Yeah, sure. So, I've been, as soon as this Gen AI solution sets came out, it immediately grasped me. I saw that Google was obviated. Like Google's original mission was we want to organize the world's information. But who did it first was really OpenAI. When ChatGPT came out, it completely killed search for me. I rarely find myself in a search terminal anymore. And then as the tooling started to progress and it really took a dive into the development space, the release of agentic Clyde tools like Claude Code, Codex, Open Code, and there's a smattering of other ones. That one, major leap. As soon as I saw that, I knew that the days were numbered for engineers, although it was still nascent stages. And so I found myself using it really heavily. And basically, these tools run in a terminal. And so I found myself having dozens and dozens of terminals. I mean, I'm talking about like 8 by 8, really pushing the computer's like rendering abilities. I probably had 60 of them open across different tabs, and I would lose track of them. I didn't know, who needed my input, which one was I even working on. I just completely lost track of them all. So that was really the original pain point that led me to thinking that I have to just build some kind of tool to manage this. Otherwise, I'm never going to be able to press forward.
Wow, that's fascinating. That many terminals. At the beginning, what did you envision Ryan Maestro to be able to do?
There's really two major goals I had for it. One of them was to solve that parallelism problem, right? I had so many parallel agents. I needed something to manage my daily interaction with them. You can think of them almost like a team. How am I communicating with my team? So that was the first challenge. The second challenge is I found myself having to babysit the AI. Like I would be watching it. I would give it an instruction. It would go off for 5 minutes, maybe 20 minutes. Then it would come back and it would need, the next instruction. And so that's not really conducive to, ideally, it's going to work while I'm sleeping. It's going to work while I'm doing something else. It's going to work while I'm AFK. And so that was the second goal of Maestro is how can we get longer unattended run times? And I had a friend, Ron Eddings, he came up with this clever solution. He's like, look, part of the problem is just context rot. As you talk to these AI agents and the document basically that you're working on with it, that conversation is getting longer and longer and starting to reach the end, it becomes confused. And in general, the longer it goes, the worse it gets. About 60%, you should start getting iffy. By 80%, you're going to start seeing issues. And it's time for either some kind of compression or to start a new context, which basically means you've lobotomized it. You got to start all over again, teaching it and explaining to it what you're working on. So his tactic was simple. Let's just make a document and it has markdown tasks in it. And let's just tell the agent, hey, go do the first task in the document. And then when it's done, it just runs again. So simple bash script, right? Just run through it until there's no tasks left. Later, someone actually had the same thought and they called it Ralph Wiggum. It became an open source plugin for a Claude Code, later became officially part of Claude Code. And it's one of the top open source projects, kind of took the initial like vibe coding world by storm. Although I still credit my friend Ron Eddings for being the inceptor of what Maestro does is it takes that concept and it provides a visual, delightful desktop experience. So I'm not having to write shell scripts, but I can just create markdown documents and put them in a list and reorder them and loop them and just hit go and let the AI just slowly but surely with a fresh context per task go through each one. And now I regularly get multi-hour run times. I regularly get over 12 hours. My peak is 21 hours. The record in the Maestro community is 2.5 days, which is just
Wow.
obscene to think about.
Yes, yes.
There's an organization called METR, and they provide insights into the efficacy of the code quality output versus how many hours it can go unattended. And they show all the different models and how, of course, the newer models can go further and more efficient. But it's something like 30% success rate under 5 hours. Like I'm easily empirically seeing 80% success rate with 12 hours, 20 hours, no problem. It's extremely it's changed the way that I work. I'm spending my days polishing what the AI did last night while I'm interacting with the AI through the day, and then working with the AI to create specification documents to run on the next night. And I'm like a 24/7 one-man shop now.
That is amazing. That is amazing. So you kind of describe kind of what is happening. Maybe I think you said there are three major contributors, right? Can you talk about that in a little bit more detail?
Yeah, sure. The big deals are it's got to be fast, right? I want to be able to like fly through it. I don't want it to slow me down. I have keyboard shortcuts for everything. Maestro is a terrible name for it because it's terrible for SEO, but I just can't help myself because it's really what I feel like. I feel like I'm moving this baton around, and like I do this over there and I do that over here, and agents are just working for me. I feel like a billionaire with like a bunch of teams that I'm just nudging along to work on projects for myself. So that I, as an example, like let's just use Maestro as an example. Maestro has an app. It's the desktop app that runs. It runs on Mac, Windows, Linux. It supports Codex, Claude Code, Factory.ai, Open Code, and it can run both locally or remotely. So I've got some agents that are running on a machine that I connect to over SSH. And personally, I'll show this in a second, but I'm like hovering around the 50 agent mark. I have so many of these
Wow.
agents running. So, those are all the big deals of it, right? And then on the other side of it is the server. It's the run maestro.ai. It's the leaderboard. It's the landing page. And so there's some communication that goes back and forth. Well, I found myself, if I had to coordinate, for example, building the leaderboard, I would be in the middle. Like, hey, server side, we want to build a leaderboard. What do you think? Hey, application, here's what the server side thinks. What kind of data can you give to it? So let's tease out what the data structure is going to look like and all this. So I'm like, this is silly. I should never sit in between AI. So I made this concept of group chat where now I can go and say, hey, at Maestro, at runmaestro.ai, I would like to build a leaderboard. You guys work together and figure it out. I'll tell you a quick story. I have a friend. He can code to a degree, but he's not an engineer. He's more of a PM, a founder, a CEO. And he's been expressing frustration with his engineering team. And I sat with 2 1-hour sessions with him, but 2 hours of total, just working with him on Maestro, unlocking him. And he's come back to me just extremely elated. I mean, he's getting so much value out of it. Like me, I'm up to 2 Claude Max accounts. I'm eyeballing my third because I've got these things working around the clock. I hit the limits of the Claude Max account. So I'm already butting against the limits of a second one, and this buddy of mine has reached that same level. So it's definitely attainable for people who are not classic engineers. You'd be amazed at what you can build and get out of it as long as you know what you want and you can
Yes.
articulate what you want,
Uh-huh.
and you have the ability to then give feedback to the system. It's like you're working with a team, and it'll do the work for you.
Yes. So let's talk about adoption. What do you see at this point?
Yeah, I'm building this thing in the open. It's open source. It's open source license. I have zero intention of making any money off of it. It really is just a labor of love. I put it out there, and it started picking up, with some people, mostly through my, I'm a cybersecurity specialist, and so my computer hacker friends, especially here in Austin, they love it. I walk around. We have a co-working space that we shared. I just came back from paternity leave, and it tickles my fancy to walk around the office and see Maestro on people's desktops.
Uh-huh.
But it took a little leap. Like we're over 2,000 stars on GitHub now. There's like 200 people on the Discord community. I've got a solid like 10 people who are contributing regularly, and really it's been a joy because I do enjoy building on Maestro, but really I built this thing to use it, and it's grown a little bit bigger than me. Like I'm Claude Code on Mac. I don't really want to be supporting Linux open code over SSH. Like that's just not a combination, a happy path for me. So I'm happy that there's a community building behind it, and I hope to reach the point where I'll be getting surprised by features that are coming into it one day.
Okay. Okay. That's fabulous. Now, in terms of results, right? Besides adoption, what else are you seeing? Are you happy with the return of this labor of love so far?
Oh yeah, for sure. I can't imagine honestly my day without it. Previously, my number one favorite app on the planet was Obsidian. Anyone who knows me knows that I'm a heavy Obsidian user. It's a personal knowledge management system. Behind the scenes, it's all Markdown. And one of the reasons that's glorious is because obviously that's a first-class citizen for all of these agentic client command line coding tools, right? So I've been running Claude inside of my Obsidian to communicate back and forth for some time. And now that I have Maestro, for the most part, I live within Maestro. And Obsidian has become my second favorite apps. Without a doubt, I'm just to have the tool to use is worth it alone. I'm doing everything with it, whether it's from like my production work to to advisory work, to personal research, to personal tooling, market research. I leverage it for absolutely everything.
Okay, that's great. That's great. What's next? What's next for Ron and Maestro?
Well, there's a long laundry list of features that I still want to build out, capabilities that will enhance the abilities of whoever's operating it. The world is also fast changing, right? Like you can't just sit stagnant. One of the beauties of Maestro is I'm not competing with these agentic development tools. I'm sitting on top of them. In fact, I'm not even like a lot of these tools that have come out. Since I've launched, there's been a whole bunch of other orchestration conducting tools. Some of them are in violation of the terms of services from these companies, these providers. But the way that I've architected Maestro, it is not. We actually call those tools and we let it return a result, just like you would in the command line. So it's exact same usage. You just have an interface on top of it, user experience on top of it. But as an example, just this past week, Opus 4.6 came out. They made a bunch of news. Codex 5.3 came out. Again, a bunch of, GPT 5.3. But kind of quietly, not so much news, is Claude Code was updated to have, basically agentic teams. So previously, you could define a sub-agent, which means I ask a question of the provider, and it says, oh, I have a sub-agent to do it now. Or maybe this task can be 3 tasks, and there's 3 sub-agents that are relevant. Let me spawn them all in parallel. And then they'll give me the results back, and I'll feed that up to my human operator. Well, now they have unlocked agent teams where instead of this tree formation, it's more of a hub and spoke, and they can speak to each other. So they manage shared task lists. They can communicate with one another. So you give a task to an actual team that is cross collaborating. And overall, I don't think it's a major leap for structured work like development, but I do think it's a massive leap for unstructured work like, let's say you're doing offensive security research. That's perfect. You can have a whole bunch of different roles. You give them their prerogative. You give them their goal. You have one be like the project manager, and you just unleash them and let them go to town. So as these new capabilities come out, I'll have to look at how can we build a beautiful experience inside of the desktop app to kind of wrap that all so that that ability is still open to you on Maestro.
Okay. Okay. Great. So last point. Is there anything else that you're doing in AI that you want the audience to know?
I leverage vibe coding to build a lot of tools for myself. For example, I'm a heavy user of Granola. That is a meeting, annotation app that runs locally. I used to use Rewind.ai before it went away. I've got all sorts of tooling that I would like to interact with through AI. And just recently, Granola released an MCP server, but I've been using MCP with them for ages because I built one with using vibe coding. So in general, there's a lot of side projects that were just kind of in the back burner, like an idea. But now, because it's so cheap in terms of attention and cost, all of that long laundry list of ideas that I've had are all coming to life. And so, there's things of that nature that folks can check out if they're curious. I'll give you another example. In general, the AI for me is a lot about increasing my aperture, my capacity to do work. And
Yes.
part of that is reducing the amount of information that comes in. So I'm subscribed to 270 something like RSS feeds. There's so many podcasts that I'm subscribed to. That's a lot of haystack. There's only a few needles in there. And I used to spend a good amount of time every day with Feedly, with ReadKit on OSX, just going through them, or flipping through the podcast as I'm about to get ready to go bike to work to see what I want to listen to. So now I've created pipelines for that. One's called RSS City and the other one is called Pod Cidian. And both of these tools are vibe coded, and they will go ingest all of my podcasts, ingest all of my news. They run prompts to give like labels and rates and give me an idea of like, would I enjoy this? And then what I get is a distilled news feed on a daily basis that now I get from Maestro. I'll just go ask him like, hey, what's the latest in the news? What should I be concerned with? and it'll just spit out all the headlines. And if I want to dive deep, it's all saved into my Obsidian, and like it's my newspaper basically.
Wow. I think this point of not only you want to do more yourself, but also reduce the information overload and only get the nuggets that you want. That's a really neat idea, and be able to use Maestro to do that. That's wonderful. I can't wait to get my hands on the tool, man, and I'll let you know how that goes.